Alright, so we are continuing with the break-even formulas. We have started in section 2 or part 2 of break-even analysis. So we are moving on to contribution to sales ratio. Right, so let's take it from there. So we are saying that contribution to sales ratio has to do with your contribution, the rate at which your contribution will be able to cover your sales. I mean, you try to find out the ratio at what number, what figure that your contribution will be able to cover your sales. And we try to find the ratio in between the two, and we establish them more like always in a percentage form. So contribution to sales ratio is always your contribution over your sales and then multiply by what? 100. Always find them in percentage, so multiply by what? 100. Or it's the same thing as your PV, which is profit to volume. Profits in marginal costing, contribution is the profit, then the volume is what? The sales, right? So that is profit. Sorry, that is profit over volume. So the same thing, which is contribution. So if I choose profit per unit, I mean contribution over your sales. That's in volume, right? And then also multiply by what? 100 multiplied by 100, right? So remember with the contribution and then the sales you're talking about, they are all in per unit. You need to know that they are all in but per unit. That's why I have it to be per unit. So likewise here also in per what unit. So that's selling price per unit. So you need to take note of that, so that you won't mislead when it comes to sales, but you won't mislead the total sale with your selling price per unit. So let's take note of that. Alright, so we can also talk about what I mean by target profit. Target profit. We are saying that there are certain instances where managers or controllers of the organization may decide that we want to make this certain level of out so that we can make this profit. So they may always make this decision on basis of what estimation that if you're able to produce or sell up to this level, then we can make this profit. So this one becomes a foundation, a building block, a motivation behind what they're going to produce. If they are to produce it, or to motivate them to produce more and sell more, so that they can at the end of the day reach that target profit. And how do you calculate target profit? Target profit comes in two sections. You have what we call targeted profit in terms of units, then targeted profit in terms of what? Sales or value. Okay, so we're saying that with targeted profit, if targeted profit in terms of units, it is equal to your fixed cost. The only thing that changes there is your targets we're going to add up plus your profit, targeted profit, right, divided by your price, that's selling price. Let me make a difference so that you confuse the P and the P here. So here is selling price, then here is your targeted profit, minus your variable cost all per unit. That's the only difference that makes it targeted. So you can see that when we take the targeted profit, we are left with just the break-even point in terms of units. So with targeted profit, just add the profit to it, then just add the profit to your break-even point in terms of unit, but the profit should be as a numerator, so that added to the first cost. Then the same thing also runs through with in terms of sales or value. It's also equal to fixed cost plus your target profit. Let me have target profit here over your selling price less your variable cost all per unit, and multiply by your selling price per unit. So likewise to this, also similar to your break-even point in terms of what value, just that the targeted profit that changes everything, it makes a difference rather. So then you can get this one too as well. So that's how you also calculate target profit. Then you can lastly talk about your margin of safety. That's what I want to talk about. Margin of safety, as we discussed in that of the second video, or the second session that we had, we said margin of safety is a level beyond the break-even point, beyond which, if it is beyond the break-even point, how we can make what profit. So the level beyond the break-even point at which the organization can make what profit. That's what I mean by margin of what? Safety. Margin of safety. So we are saying that margin of safety, as we discussed later on, or discussed earlier on, we said your MOX in terms of units, if it's in terms of units, then it's equal to your sales in units minus your break-even point in unit. That's what we said. They also said that if you have your MOX in terms of value, the only thing that changes is that you are bringing the monetary aspect, so it becomes your sales in value minus your break-even point. Your break-even point also in what? In value. We know the two. So here to this one, the question I'm going to give to you, they're going to give it to you in the question form, then you do your substitution and you are good to go. All right. So that is your marginal, which is 5. So that's generally, but we have a lot of formulas on the break-even, but at this level we're going to stick ourselves to just 5, because we just discussed the two break-even point in terms of value and in units, then contribution to sales ratio, target profit, then margin of safety. So we are going to take some few examples on that as well, so that we know our way forward. So let's take an example on that. So we are continuing with the example on the break-even formula that we just discussed. So okay, but the requirement wasn't given. Let the requirement be given, because I didn't have the requirement. So the requirement here is you are asked to calculate. So you need to should have had the requirement, but we're not to professor have provided the requirement. The requirement here is you are asked to find your break-even point in terms of units and in value, the contribution to sales ratio, the margin of safety in terms of units and value, then sales to earn a profit of 200,000. All right, 200,000. All right. So here the sales earn a profit of 200,000 here, meaning is what? The targeted profit in terms of sales. So I'll say units to earn a profit. I've seen that one was targeted profit in terms of what? In units. But here it says sales, so targeted profit in terms of what? Value. So you're going to look at in terms of what the value aspect, right? So I know the first one you can do break-even point in value, you can handle that. So I want us to handle from a contribution to sales ratio, margin of safety, then other. If time comes in, we come here, right? But before even we look at that, we need to know what we call our contribution. So I said contribution also be an aspect for the sales too. But what I wanted to actually say is we need to look out for your variable cost per unit, because we know the selling price, but we don't know the variable cost per unit. Here they gave it to us in a form of what? The breakdown form. I mean, you know that, as I said earlier on, direct material, direct labor, and direct expenses, they are all an aspect of what? A variable cost. So we need to put them together so we can get our variable cost per what? Unit. I hope that is okay. So let's see how to go by that. So here I need to compute for my variable cost per unit. So this is what I will do. My variable cost. So let me have the solution here. It's already there, but let me cancel it. Okay, let it be there. So my variable cost per unit will be equal to, how would I go by that? I'm taking into consideration, okay, let me have it in this way. I'm taking into consideration the items I'm dealing with, what? Direct material, direct labor, and direct what? Expenses. So all gave me, so direct material is 70, direct labor 25, direct expenses 5. But remember, we're having a production overhead, which is a variable overhead of what? 20. It's also part of the variable cost. You need to add up. So variable overheads, that one too also was what? 20. you should have compute all these 4 items. You're going to get, let's see, 70 plus 25 plus 5 plus 20. You get what? 120 Ghana cedis as your total variable cost. I hope that is clear. So anytime you are giving the breakdown form of the variable, which is direct material, labor, expense, or you are giving any two or one, just add that together with. Always note that what goes into the variable cost per unit is all the direct aspects. If they give to you, let's say, total direct material cost, you need to find, if you want to find the variable cost per unit, you need to have find what the direct material cost per unit, so that you can do same for direct labor and direct expense, so that you can get the per one, then add up all, so that you can get your variable cost per unit. So always your variable cost per unit will include your direct material cost per unit, your direct labor cost per direct expense, and the variable production overheads cost per unit. That one's also very important, you need to look out for, because not any variable overhead that we include in it. So always you need to take note of that. So that is what we actually, so we had 120 for the variable cost. So variable cost per unit is equal to that 120. So as I said earlier on, we are just starting from question 2. So contribution to 2, I can say that my C over X is equal to my contribution over what? Sales, which is the selling price. All of them are in per unit, please take note. So here my contribution per unit, but you know, for you to find contribution, you say contribution is basically your selling price minus your variable cost. That's why it was a need for you to find what? Your variable cost. So here divided by my selling price is what? Selling price. So here my selling price was 200, my variable cost was what? 120, divided by my selling price is what? 200, and multiply by, you said you should multiply by what? 100. So multiply by what? 100. So when we do that, take a calculator. So 200 minus 120 over 200 multiplied by what? 100. So I had 40%. So the 40% will be your contribution to sales ratio. Always it is your contribution per unit divided by your selling price per unit, all multiplied by 100. So take note for that. Then your MOX, your margin of safety. So let's think of margin of safety, short form in terms of unit, is equal to your sales in unit minus your break-even point in unit. But have we calculated our break-even point? We haven't done that, so with that we can do it. So with my calculator, I can say that break-even point in unit is equal to my fixed cost. I know my fixed cost from the question. My fixed cost from the question was given here as what? 160,000, right? So I can do that. So I can say that my fixed cost is 160. Do I have pause that? You're going to do that for us. So I jump straight away to question 2 so that you do that one. So but here it can be very necessary, so we need to find that using my calculator. You can also do same with your calculator if you have one at your end, or any calculator, whether phone or anything of that, you can also try as well. So 160 divided by my selling price per unit is what? 200 minus my variable cost, which is what? 120 per unit. So I'm gonna get 2,000 as my break-even point in terms of units. So here my sales in units was given a question as what? 3,500. Then now with my calculator, I had break-even to what? In terms of unit to be 2,000. So it means that my margin of safety is 1,500 units, and this is the level of unit, that one you produce, you can make what? Profit. That's margin of what? Safety in terms of units. So let's look out for in terms of 8th value. In terms of 8th value, let's look at that one too. In terms of 8th value, let's look at that one too. It's very important that we do. So as I said earlier, in terms of 8th value to the same MOX in terms of value will also be equal to your sales in value minus your break-even point in value. We know how to get the break-even point in value. I know the sales in value will be my sales in unit multiplied by my selling price. That will be my sales in value. I know the selling price was what? 200. So here it becomes 3,500 multiplied by what? 200 minus, then my break-even point was 2,000. I also multiply that one by selling price, which is what? 200. So at the end of the day, I'm going to arrive at so at the end of the day, I'm going to have this to be 700,000, then this one to be 400,000. You can also check it with your calculator. So here I'm gonna have 400 minus 7. I'm going to get what? 300. So 300,000. And I see this as my margin of safety in terms of what? Value. Okay, so that's my margin of safety in terms of value. Then lastly, you can talk about your sales to earn a profit of 200,000. That's your targeted profit in terms of what? Sales. We said targeted profit in terms of sales. That one too. We said that one targeted profit in terms of sales. That's CP in terms of sales. We said is equal to your fixed cost plus your targeted profit. Remember, divided by your selling price minus your variable cost all per unit and multiply by your selling price. This is the formula that we discussed. I hope you have seen. Where is it? Here. This one. So that's what we are employing here. That's what we are using here. So here, where is our targeted? Our targeted profit to 200,000, and our fixed cost was 16,000. Where is our fixed cost? 16,000 here. Sorry, 160,000. Then other variables are also employed. So that we can say that our fixed cost was 160,000 plus 200,000 as my targeted profit, then divided by my selling price, which is 200 minus my variable is what? 120, then multiply by my selling price of what? 120 again. So at the end of the day, when I compute, show that way with your calculator, 160,000 plus 200,000 all divided by 200 minus 120 and then multiply by what? 120. Then I get 540,000. Get 540. That's my targeted profit. You can also check yours and let's see. What you had for your targeted profit. Or let's check. Oh, sorry, here it should have been 200. And I said this, not 120. So at the end of the day, when you compute, you're going to get 900,000 as your targeted targeted profit in terms of what? Sales. So if the organization is able to exceed certain level and make this profit of 200, you can get a sale of what? 900,000. That's the meaning. If the organization is able to produce at a particular level and make a profit of 200,000, meaning that I can make a sale of what? 900,000. So that is the meaning behind targeted profit. So please work out for the break-even point in terms of unit and in value, because we have discussed so far, as I use my calculator to work for the 2,000 and the rest to solve for the others. So that is that. So let's discuss briefly, that's the latter part of break-even analysis on the graph aspect. Then we take a dedicated time to go through and take a graph question to solve on another aspect, and in a different section or in a different video on that, but not on this one. All right, so let's take on to another section. Let's see the graph aspect by looking at graph. So we are continuing, and this will be the last part of this video, break-even graph. Right, so now if I have this vertical line, then being joined by a horizontal line, we call this line your Y curve, and you call this one your S curve. Okay, but this curve that we are talking about in business modeling costing, we say this curve can be called your cost or revenue curve. Then here can be called what? Your output. So let's take note, your output. Okay, now we are saying that the revenue or the cost curve and the output curve meet at a point called the point of what? Origin. The point of origin is called what? O, always as what? 0 or O, meaning that no activity has was started. Right, so now, but on the cost of the revenue line, there's also another line that can be drawn from the cost of revenue line. It touches the cost of revenue line. Let's say we draw that line from here to this side. It's always parallel to that of the horizontal line. It's always parallel to the horizontal line, but this is perpendicular to the vertical line, which is the cost of the revenue line, and we call this line your fixed cost line or what curve. Your fixed cost line or what curve. So fixed cost line or curve starts at where it becomes perpendicular to your cost of revenue line, or it becomes parallel to your output line. That's where we get your fixed cost. All right, then from the fixed cost point, where the fixed cost is meeting your vertical line, which is your cost of revenue line, there's also another line drawn from this point. Then it moves in that forward or diagonal sectional form, in this form like this, and we call this line or curve what we call the total cost. Call it total what? Cost. Call it the total what? Cost. So total cost always starts from where the fixed cost curve touches your cost of revenue line. That's where your total cost starts from. Then after getting your total cost, you need to break even, right? So you're going to get our total revenue. So total revenue too is also a line or curve that starts from the origin, that's from this side, then it cut across, so it moves in this section form. So here is also your total revenue. Right? Total revenue. So where the total revenue curve or line meets that of your total cost curve or line, we call it that point your break-even point. This is what we are talking about, your break-even point. Your break-even point, BEP, your break-even point. Okay, so that's your break-even point. So at the break-even point, if I to trace a dot from the break-even point to touch the horizontal line, I mean the output line, once it hits on the output line, and at this point we call this point the break even point in terms of what units or the output, because on the output line. And once I also trace the same thing from here, the break even point, to the cost or the revenue, okay, we can also call this the break even point in terms of what value. So here, when you are given a graph presentation, you can even determine your break even point in terms of value and in terms of what units. You can even determine without even giving the figures. So that is an aspect. Then also you quickly see that where the total revenue line meeting the total cost curve line is creating an angle, creating one at the top, one at the down here, and one at the top here. So you see this angle that is forming. So you are saying that below the break-even point, the angle that formed below the break-even point is what we call the loss area. We call the loss area or the loss corridor. The loss area or the loss corridor. Here, if you produce below the break-even point, you call what? The loss area or the loss corridor. But if you produce above this level, we call it what? Your profit corridor or your profit area. Most of the time, you can also call this the incidence or your angle of incidence in terms of profit, and angle of incidence in terms of what? Loss. Okay, right. So that is your profit area. Then here is your loss area, profit area. So that is that with the graph. So here becomes your loss area, here becomes your profit what area, or angle of incidence in terms of profit, and here loss. Okay, now this area from where you have your break-even point to that of your output, we call it your margin of safety in terms of what? Unit. So if you're able to produce above the break-even point in terms of the output, you're going to get what? You're going to maintain a profit at this level. You're going to meet. Likewise, this aspect too is also you call your margin of safety in terms of what? Value. That is a monetary what? Value. So that's what we also mean by your margin of what? Safety. Then in between your total cost and your fixed cost, there we have what we call your variable cost. But this one is a traditional graph. Most of the time, I don't present the variable cost curve or line here. But if we were to engage on the contribution break-even graph, that's where you're gonna have your variable cost curve line. And in that one too, you won't see that of the fixed cost, because when it comes to the contribution break-even graph, fixed cost is omitted, it's not part. But when you have your total cost, it cannot be drawn from this point, but here won't be what shown. Okay, but you're going to show your variable cost, and that is with the break-even analysis graph on that. So far we started with break-even analysis. We started talking about meaning of break-even analysis. We discussed how to know the factors that went to break-even analysis. That's the cost, your revenue, and then output. We discussed a lot of them. Discuss into detail what they all mean. Then we also look into talking about the objectives of break-even. And we said that the objective of break-even is to know the level at which your total cost will equate to your total sales. Then we discuss even factors that help us to calculate total cost, determine total cost accurately. We're able to cover a lot. Then we discussed some of the assumptions of break-even analysis. Then we also went on to talk about the formulas and the break-even analysis. Then we have ended here. We landed lastly on the break-even graph. So this is where we bring an end to section 3 of break-even analysis. So that is break-even analysis for you. So this is where we bring an end to. So thanks once again for watching this video. It's been a pleasure for me to come your way to assist you, to help you, and to better yourself in your area of what specialization. So we'll meet in a subsequent video where we discuss other matters on mathematics. So thank you once again. See you and have a good day. Bye bye.